Being Programmed to Chill, a show about business, crime, parapolitics, and esoterica, with your host, Jimmy Fallon Gong.
But, oh yes, I thought this was the most interesting guy. Actually, this is not the most interesting guy. I mean, he's interesting because of all this, we got into kind of dipping our toes for the first time into what, how much of a hard power this, soft power of the Crusaders in the third world, how closely they operate, with the dictatorships of these countries, and with the armies and with the CIA doing industrial espionage and things like this. They aren't just selling Bibles, right? Like they are doing other things as well. So there was Paul Kane also, whom in 1957 Branham sent to preach in Switzerland and Germany, holding anti-communist meetings that supposedly gathered 180,000 people in a week. And already in 1981, Paul was talking about that there was going to be a new demonic hybrid of communism and Islam, because, of a rupture in the end of the 1970s, there was going to be a new enemy that, his followers needed to be prepared for, which, okay.
That just sounds like the Ba'athist Party, but that already existed.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're just everything I don't like. In the picture, one picture of
combining it all.
And so here it gets really interesting, right? Like now we're going to touch upon some of the things that you talked about in your episode. That Kane served as a consultant to the Central Intelligence Agency's Paranormal Division, and a consultant to the FBI's National Center for Intelligence and Counterterrorism. And he was a presidential consultant and special envoy for 3 different presidents. And with Kane, we have, probably the best documented connections between the second-generation Branhamites, the Latter Rain movement, and these para-religious techniques of mass hypnosis and subject modification, and the federal intelligence community's interest in these fields. And, directly funded by Branham, just like Jones was. So, yeah. I mean, I wanted to, Jones does the kind of the most, they all have it. I was saying, where did this whole movement come from? Well, I said that it was, the end of World War II, but I guess you should say that, it's the beginning of whatever the dropping of the atomic bombs was the beginning of. I mean, otherwise you can't really have, I think, this kind of millenarian and apocalyptic setting, I think, in an industrial society, unless that industrial society itself is, the agent or what is capable of actually ending, and bringing on the whole apocalypse, basically.
Yeah, that's a good point. Post-Cold War, I feel like people don't talk that much about the possibility of nuclear war ending all life on Earth, but it was very much at the front of everyone's minds during the Cold War.
Yeah. I think it's I literally think it's I think everybody have some repressed element of nuclear war. I think undoubtedly, when I was, I'm going to talk about that too much, but I remember when I was I was put in an insane asylum in Hong Kong for a while. And I had never thought about that shit before in my life. But when I went there, I was convinced, that there was going to be a nuclear war. I even thought that if I just put down my head, that I would have some button in the backside of my head, and that was going to initiate the whole thing. And so I think, there is something if you want to tap into people's minds and you want to make them really afraid, you want to do some, program to kill shit with them, you have to tap into the fear of atomic nuclear war. And Jones was, he mentions when they're in Jonestown, no less than 40 times is he talking about, and his view is very specific, it's so entangled. He thinks that that America and Russia are in a kind of stalemate. And of course, this also, aligns with Mao and his third world theory. However, according to Jones, he thinks that the Chinese are going to start the war between Russia and America by sending the first nuclear bomb, and trying to be so that they will start blaming each other, and nobody sees that it's China who's done it, and then the third world is going to rise from the ashes of that apocalyptic war. And that's basically what Jones seems to believe, and this is supposedly what motivated him, to start going, when we get into the early days, of his lives, when we're done with the Branhamites, this is supposed to be his thing, why he's going around trying to find a place to escape the nuclear war.
Yeah. Like, it's funny, right? Because it's almost like Helter Skelter plus the joint dictatorship of the proletariat or something.
Yeah, it is. And some, throw in some like Maoism there, like with the peasantry and a kind of naive love for like primitive or undeveloped, like it's not I don't know, like it's he seems to be thinking that it's so much purer by this new age notion of living closer to nature, that alone is going to somehow save you from the nuclear, that the industrial war will only affect people who are within the industrial sphere, so to speak.
Didn't he pick Ukiah and to a lesser extent Jonestown because theoretically they were like less likely to like be wiped out or something? Am I remembering that?
Yeah. I was supposed to have been in an article by some right-wing newspaper. There's also some interesting things about that, because people use that when we get here. I'll see if I have some more on the Branhams. I don't think so. So I can already say that that there are these there's these mysterious years of his early time, like between Indiana and the move to Ukiah, when Jones is in a kind of limbo, and it's year 1960 to year 1963. And this, article came out in the year 1962, which means that, some of it, the first 2-3 years couldn't have been connected to that article. I mean, I don't know what, how much weight to put on that, but, Jim Hogan, points that out. And I think Jones was already like, a paranoid schizophrenic by this point. And, he, how organic that is, we'll get to in a very short time. And I don't know. I don't think he needed that article to already be thinking like that, Like I said, he mentions it in the end.
Yeah, but then like the specifics of it, right, are telling that he gets the specifics from like this right-wing like article.
Yeah. And and it is explicitly those 8 places that they label on the article that he actually does go to eventually, right? Belo Horizonte, Guyana, and Ukiah. And then, there's a few other things. But so okay, maybe we should start here then again now. Like, let's get into Jones, right? Let's do the mysterious years of 1960, 1963. How about that?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So I thought, we talked about you covering the Brazilian stuff and our friend Mitrione.
Yeah.
But it's which is, I think, probably the most interesting of everything that went down these year 60 to 63. But there are a few other things that are, worth mentioning that, this isn't everyday American life stuff that happens to Jones during his sabbatical. We should say, like, he's moving away. We already talked about it because, he's worried about a nuclear war. And on a more mundane level, he also seems to be worried about, that maybe he seems to be getting into trouble with a lot of people in Indiana. I'll get into that more later, but he's maybe unsure as to where, he seems to be like, without a guide, and he doesn't seem to know where is it, supposed to take it's not even called the People's Temple yet, right? Though for the record, there has, according to some eyewitnesses, already been one rehearsal of Project White Knight or Program White Knight. I don't know what we should call it. Like maybe Project White Knight sounds cool. Yeah. where he asks basically the whole congregation, which is not big at the time, to lie down on the ground. And then he just observes them quietly. And then he kind of says, "Oh, I'm no better than you." And then he goes down and lies down with them on the ground. Like, that is the beginning of the psychodrama of Jim Jones, I think. That is the first account we have anyhow of it, which something that is alluding to the final White Knight. But Jones goes to Cuba, of all places, in and Cuba in 1959. Fidel Castro has just overthrown the Batista dictatorship and seized power. Land reforms follow within a few months of the coup, alienating foreign investors and the rich, as you should. And by summer, therefore, Cuba was in the midst of a low-intensity counter-revolution, with sabotage operations mounted from within and outside the country. And within a year of Castro's, rise to power, by January of 1960, mercenary pilots and anti-Castroites were flying bombing missions against the regime. And meanwhile, in Washington, Vice President Richard Nixon is lobbying on behalf of the military invasion of the CIA. And it is against this backdrop, in February of 1960, as Jim Hogan puts it, that Jim Jones suddenly decides to visit Havana.
The most normal time to visit Cuba.
Just going on a cruise, man. You're gonna have some lobsters and cigars.
In my episode, I was like, don't be naive. Like,
yeah, you even say, don't be childish.
Like, anytime a weird person shows up in a place experiencing a coup or a revolution, like, don't be a rube.
Yeah.
Their intelligence. Jim Jones was doing some fucking spy shit.
Yeah, definitely. There is some really, Jim Hogan points to a lot of interesting things here, which is that that he's staying at a hotel, I think, where there is an ongoing Soviet exhibition of science, technology, and culture, and where they are showing, I think, the Sputnik, that went into orbit, or I guess it's a copy of that one, or did they get it back? Was Sputnik kind of like, did it land again?
I don't know, but I'm sure they probably made more and then just like, probably showed them or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And during the time when Jones is staying there, February 4 to 13, Mikoyan, who was Mikoyan now again? Anastas I. Mikoyan. And he's the guy who's opening the Soviet exhibition. So this is the exact time when Jones is there. It's just a week. And this is when, the Soviets start to establish their relationship with Cuba, on long-term low-interest loans. And, promising to buy 1 million tons of Cuban sugar. Which again, that sounds like, it's not some interesting information maybe. But, we already touched a little bit upon, the industrial espionage, and of course it's interesting to know, what are they going to focus, what economic purpose does Cuba serve the Soviet Union? If we're gonna be going over here with planes and stuff, maybe we should focus on something that destroys the sugar plantations. So it's of course interesting. And the Hilton Hotel, right, where Jones is staying, at the same time, of course, because of this exhibition of the Sputnik, there were, spies from as many as 5 different services staying there. Like the FBI was there, the CIA was there, the KGB was there, the JRU, the Russian military intelligence was there, the DGI, the Dirección General de Inteligencia, the Cuban intelligence service, they are there. And later there is I think it's after the event, in Jonestown, there's a New York Times report of a pastor who comes to say that he met Jones during this time, and that Jones was there to set up some kind of what he was already doing, like some kind of church, and it's not really clear, what is the purpose of this church. But it seemed, could very well be this kind of or what else could it be, to be honest, than this kind of Branhamite Lateran soft power infiltration of countries. They can't have the Bay of Pig invasion, as we know it went horrible. And so what is what is the easiest way to get people into these countries? Well, probably religious churches, because if Castro starts saying that we're not going to have any churches here, like American or not, that's going to make him look bad. And so I think it's a smart way, for sure, of intelligence gathering.
Because like he doesn't speak Spanish. He wasn't like among the peasants actually preaching. Right. Like he was in a hotel with a bunch of spies, and then he was like thinking about starting a church that would have immediately been used to like fuck with Cuba.
Yeah. And I like this story that Jim Hogan had this one story where he's talking about there was some I'll read here. It's ironic then that nearly 20 years later, in this connection, an interesting coincidence concerns the presence of New York Times reporter James Reston at the Hilton. He was there to cover the Mikoyan visit, as well as the Soviet exhibition, and it seems fair to say, in a literal sense at least, he must have crossed paths with Jim Jones. It's ironic then that nearly 20 years later, his son should one day write a book, Our Father Who Art in Hell, about the decline and fall of the People's Temple. And in that book, a peculiar story is told. Quote, in December 1978, James Reston Jr. met a journalist friend at the Park Hotel in Georgetown, that is the capital of Guyana. The journalist announced ominously that he now knew the full story behind Jonestown, but he would not write it. He would not tell his editors he knew it. He would forget it and flee Guyana as soon as possible. He told Reston the name of his informant. Quote, he will contact you at your hotel. If you want it, you will get the full story. I have just heard it. I've sent the man away. If I were you, I wouldn't take it either. It will make you the most celebrated writer in America, and you will die for it. End of quote. That's some sus stuff. Yeah, and right. And Carlos Foster, that is the pastor. Yeah, we already talked about him. Who's got this tale about setting up of a church, and also there is a daughter of the family who lived in with the Joneses in Brazil later, Bonnie Malmin Thielman.
What's that, a German name? Sorry.
Yeah. Sounds like Malmin is even Swedish, I think. Like Malmin. I think I have some friends called that. And Thielman, definitely German. Yeah. Just happens to be in Brazil, Good for them to hang out there. And she said that she saw a picture that Jones, was showing, bragging, where he and Marceline, Jones' wife, is hanging out with Fidel Castro. And he also showed pictures of those mercenary pilots in their crashed planes, that we were talking about earlier. And it's just like, but why? Why do you have pictures of these things? Those are like, they are only pictures that, either Castro himself would be interested in or Castro's enemies, like, they aren't tourist pictures, and they're definitely not useful if you're just going to start a regular church over there. And also, it should be noted, I guess this is the not the most important, but an important thing we get from this trip, at least according to Carlos Foster, the pastor who was contacted about, starting a church in Cuba. He says that Jones was already well traveled in South America and that he had already been to Guyana, which is also very, very strange because not that many of the biographers even, they don't make a big thing out of this.
Interesting. But of course, like Guyana, a hot spot for espionage, like.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
If you're going to go, you should go there. And so, to understand the significance of whether, Jones had been to Guyana or not, we have to go back more than 100 years. Because did you know, Jimmy, that Jonestown was not the first mass death in, that particular part of Guyana?
I did, simply because I listened to the wonderful transmissions from Jonestown
Yeah.
podcast, which of course we also recommend.
Hmm. Yeah. And this is, not just any story. Like, uh, according to a story from the anthropologist, who was, wait, sorry here. Yeah, who Jim Hogan had contact with. It was in the northwest district of Guyana that a prophet named Smith issued a call to the country's disenfranchised Amerindians, summoning them to a mass gathering in the Pacaraima Mountains, the land of El Dorado. Acavayos, Caribs, and Arawaks came from all around to witness what they were told would be the millennium. They would see God, Smith promised, be free from all calamities of life, and possess lands of such boundless fertility that a large crop of cassava would grow from a single stick. But Smith had lied, and when the millennium failed to materialize, the followers were told they had to die in order to be resurrected as white people. At a great camp meeting in 1845, some 400 people killed themselves. Okay, so the quotation here is from an afterword by Kathleen A. Adams, who is an anthropologist and who wrote a book called Guyana. No, that is the afterword to the book Guyana Gold. And she herself wrote her doctoral thesis on the impact of gold mining industry on the Amerindian tribes in the northwest district of Guyana. Now, I did some research and I found the original source actually for this this story. And, there's some interesting things here because the man, Smith, wasn't actually a missionary prophet. He was an Indian prophet who had contact with prophets from the West. And his real name was Awakaipu, which, basically makes the story even more uncanny, since we have here an Amerindian pretending and wanting to become a white preacher, just like Jones was a white preacher pretended to be black and sometimes Indian. And, we heard it before already from the Branhamites that, this whole serpent seed doctrine makes, well, we have at least one account of a Sri Lankan and a black or two black people in Africa preaching as if they were white and, preaching a doctrine that, unless you die as, a white person, you won't go to heaven. And so you need to be reborn first as a white person. So that's not in the original story. That's not in the Kathleen Adams and Jim Hogan's account. But since I found the original story, that's what they say. And the original account of the mass suicide came from the 1871 German book Unter der Tropen by Karl F. Apun. And Apun obtained the story of the mass suicide from the Arekuna Indian, who was the son of one of the men who clubbed Awakaipu to death after the resurrection failed to happen. The Indian told Karl that the suicide happened 24 years before, which would date the mass suicide to the years around 1843 to 1845. Karl, the author, died in 1872 in his return to Guyana at the Masaruni River Penal Prison, about halfway from Kukinan and halfway to Jonestown. Believing that he was about to be eaten by his Native American guides, he swallowed poison, whereupon his guides took him to the nearest civilization. Puzzled, no doubt, about what he had done, he died in agony 2 days later. So, this is very peculiar. Why does he think that, his guides are going to eat him? And why does he swallow cyanide to get away from his guides? So, let's get even darker. I thought I should, find out something about, the tradition of shamanism in Guyana. And so I found a really good book. And are you familiar with the dark shamans known as the Kanaima? Not that you should be necessarily, but maybe.
No, I haven't heard.
Right. So the term Kanaima refers to both to a mode of ritual mutilation and killing and to its practitioners. The term can also allude to a more diffuse idea of an active spiritual malignancy in existence from the beginning of time that consumes the assassins. So it's a kind of like the darkest power that, you shouldn't mess with if you're a shaman, but which can absorb you, which, we have words like good trip and bad trips in our tradition of, the psychedelic experience. But these people, they've been doing it for quite some time, and, they have a lot more words to explain what, just might happen when you, play around with the mind a little bit too much.
Almost like a black hole, if you will.
Yeah, something like that. There are 3 interconnected but distinct forms of shamanism in Guyana. It's the Pia, the Alleluia, and the Canaima. And so Pia shamanism is most often described in general anthropologic literature, that it refers to individuals who have the power to cure and kill, but who are primarily sought after for the former purpose. So it seems that the Pia are like, they're the good guys, but, who are they already have the power to kill, but they choose not to, right? And so the Alleluia is a kind of a in between, because at the end of the 19th century, a new form of shamanism influenced by contacts with missionaries was invented in the Guyana highlands, and it involved a direct relationship with Katu or Aqua, which is the word they have for God. And the key ritual technique of this complex is the possession of chants. And these chants make use of certain non-Patamuna words or phrases, such as the term Alleluia, which is, sounds like hallelujah, right? Mm-hmm. And which, this practice is named after. And the chant owner is called an Alleluia son. And, so we have those 3, like obviously then, the Pia are like kind of the good guys that can become Canaima if they are absorbed by the Canaima. And then there are the Alleluias who are, the ones who are in contact with the well, in our case, the Pentecostalists, quite obviously, and they're, interested, and they're, I'm sure, exchanging techniques of, well, para-religious techniques of, hypnosis and things like this. And I think this about the chants is one of the most interesting things, because we know that Jonestown had a lot of contact with Amerindians, and we know that Jones also invented new chants. And, he had a new master signifier, which was his own neologism, right? God socialism, which he talked about. And so most hypnoticists today also, they will tell you that the most powerful tool a hypnoticist has is his words. And in religious context, we call them chants or mantras and psalms and nursery rhymes. And going through the literature of the hospitals around San Francisco, and the doctors, which we are going to take a look at later, this was a hot topic of research. There was semiotics, cybernetics, communication.
Neuro-linguistic programming is basically like another, like, that idea, right? With like words, chants, like making pathways in your brain and so forth.
Right. This is like the more fringe things, I guess, like together with auditing and engrams. Then you also have like this NLP stuff, which doesn't mean that it's, less effective. It's just that, it's maybe more of a loose cannon. I think it's sometimes wrong when they say, oh, it's pseudoscientific, as if to make it sound like it doesn't have any effect. No, it's just that it's, it's just way more risky, and like, way more, you don't really know what you're dealing with, it's just, which is, I guess, it's not a scientific approach, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have any effect just because it's pseudo-scientific.
Yeah, drinking colloidal silver is pseudoscientific, but it does a very real thing.
Yeah, granted. Yeah. And so, yeah. And
like staying up all night and listening to Jim Jones do hypnotic sermons is like pseudoscientific, and yet it's a very real thing.
Yeah, there are some effects if you happen to set it on fire. And I will touch more about this later, because we are getting close to the primary subject matter of your show, and I would say, though, that a lot of the more nefarious pursuits, in this field by grifters as well as doctors, was going beyond the ethos laid out by Freud in psychoanalysis, and instead looking, and I'm talking about San Francisco now in the 70s, and instead they were looking towards Western mystics as neuroscientists. And I'll definitely, it's my major point actually to come back to later. And there's one nice book about this called The Neuromatic, A Particular History of Religion and the Brain, which has a lot of the trends in San Francisco during this time. And I think it's also interesting to note that in connection with all this, Jones thought, social studies and recruited followers in a small rural village called Boonville. This is in Ukiah when the church gets there. And, Boonville, I don't know if you heard about it. Some of your listeners maybe know it. Maybe it's a famous thing in America. I don't know. But it became famous in the 60s for having developed an extremely esoteric argot called Bondling. And, argot is a language used by various groups to prevent outsiders from understanding their conversations, right? So, Victor Hugo, in his novel Les Miserables, he says that argot is both the language of the dark and the language of misery. So here's a smart, just one sentence what Boonville sounds like. And, you tell me if this sounds like English to you or if you can understand it. Bucky waltered my apollid to a tidrix for Bals, Chiggle, and Z's. And that's supposed to mean I telephoned my girlfriend to go to a party for good food and coffee. I mean, that's not English, right? They have really successfully developed another language.
That's very interesting. It reminds me simultaneously of Cockney slang and then also stupid Lewis Carroll bullshit.
Yeah, and like kind of these pigeon languages, right? Patois and things like that. Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting that, that Jones would choose this particular place to go and teach social studies over there, and also recruiting people from this village and getting, his children into the school of this place so that, maybe they can learn a thing or two about how to keep a community secret or, how to learn to have your own language, which, it's very frequent. We've been talking about white knights a lot, which, if you don't know what white knights are, that sounds strange because usually we associate darkness with something, with what happened over there. But they changed all the words to, like blackmail was white mail or black market was white market and things like that. And they, they also famously had their own code book when they were talking on the radio. So, I mean, I urge your listeners also to keep this in mind, next time you listen to the death tape, if you choose to do so, and pay a close attention to how Jones is talking, not only the possibly drug-induced trance slur in which he speaks, but also the rhythm and the repetition of words that he chooses in contrast to those who are shouting orders. And it's so it's really eerie, the contrast that what he's doing over there, he's so calm in the middle of all this, chaotic noise and everything that, you're wondering, you just would want to listen to him so that you don't have to feel everything that's happening around you.
Yeah,
and it's just
he's been he was hypnotic even back when he was preaching in Indiana. He only continued to develop hypnotic preaching techniques. It's remarkable.
Yeah. And I guess also I don't have to remind the listener that, these shamans back in Guyana are probably the most, most qualified in the world when it comes to the art of psychoactive plant medicine, right? Like as Yopo, DMT snuffing, for example, which is getting famous today. That's from Guyana. And it's the shamans there who developed that, as far as I could understand.
Wait. Are you trying to tell me that the DMT elves are the ones that are taking over these shamans?
The DMT elves are, the wandering souls of the people in Jonestown. Trying to tell you what you should and shouldn't do. Yeah, and I mean, this wasn't, if this was an interest of Jones, I would bet my money on it that it was, because, it's also it's in sub-project 11, 12, 22, 32, 37 of MK Ultra that I could find. And even, sub-project 1, what's the title of sub-project 1? Well, it's to isolate and characterize the alkaloids of Ipomoea Sidalia choisi, which is, I think it's the one of the morning glory plants, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, again, that there should be contacts with the Alleluia shamans. Not that far out of an idea, I think. They seem to have had a lot to learn from each other.
Interesting.
And I don't know, like one thing I really get hooked on is this, you know, a lot of people have pointed out, you know, that there is this sign, right, that hangs in the big gathering hall of Jonestown, where it says, and it's still there, that it says, you know, those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it. I'm sure you heard about that.
Yeah, it's like a Santayana quote or something.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, that's, you know, I'm sure most of your listeners also know that this quote is also present in Auschwitz. But it's so weird because Santayana didn't mean it in the way, you know, we think that he did. Like it's not about like learning from history. He's basically saying that like primitive people who don't have a written word, they are condemned to, you know, forever repeating the same pattern again and again. And he was also like, you know, full-blown racist. Like he even believed in eugenics. So I'm wondering, you know, what kind of perverse psychopathic joke is it to put up, you know, this sign in Auschwitz if the man is a eugenicist? Like, are you winking an eye to, you know, is the quote not to, you know, to the average observer, but to the Nazis themselves, being like, we know what you did here, but, you know, you got caught. So, you know, think about that next time we try to do a better eugenics program. Or like, why did somebody put that quote there? And why did somebody put it in Jonestown? Because, you know, if we now have this record of some Amerindian mass suicide, and then it happens again, and, you know, according to the anthropologist, that's the weirdest thing, right? Jones is supposed to have known about this quote. She says that he knew about it way before they ever came to Guyana in the end, like in the, you know, 78, 76 there when Jones arrived. And so this must have been at that time when Jones did his first kind of secret mission to Guyana. And I don't know, you know, what to think about that, you know, because what kind of fucking psychopath does something like that? You know, he knows that it has happened. He's there with them for 2 years. He's already, like, as we said already, he done it in Indiana. We don't know how long this has been on his mind and the elite crew's mind, but they're walking past this thing every day, and every day they meet in that hall, and the sign is there, and it's a kind of, you know, oh, you think we're just teaching you about history to deprogram you? We really know what this means to be, you know, to be repeating history, because something happened in this very place 150 years ago, which we're not going to tell you about until it's too late. I mean, what?
And and it's like as straightforward a case as you can get of like someone pretending to be another race in some form and then convincing that group to just commit mass suicide. And it's like, yeah, that's what a fucking crazy serpent seed, like social Nazi would do. And that's exactly what he ends up fucking doing.
Yeah, exactly. You should have seen it coming somehow. Like, I don't know. At the same time, like, who could have? I don't know. It's all like,
who could have predicted this? Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck me. All right. So, right. So this, if we're gonna try to see what else, you know, what else was Jones up to here in Guyana during this time when he's supposed to have known about this. Right. So Jim Hogan points out about this, you know, that I already hinted at, that Jones biographers are often ignorant of any travels to Guyana. But still, Reiterman has this, you know, citation, which is just put in there without any further explanation, that Jones did go to Guyana, and that he was on the 7th page of the Guyana Weekly, and he was, you know, preaching some kind of anti-communist message to the listeners there in Guyana, which is what we talked about already. And so that's, I mean,
oh, an anti-communist message, you say? Okay.
Yeah, right. Why are you doing that, Jones? I thought you were a communist, and I thought this whole project was to do like same as with Forbes Burnham. Like, why does he allow him to go there and stay there? Now, right. So why does Jones even go here in the first place? We said something about this like that something happened back in Indiana, right? And so in the fall of 1961, right, Jim Jones was becoming very paranoid, and he was under treatment for stress, and he was hearing extraterrestrial voices and suffering seizures, and he was hospitalized during most of the first week in October, and he resigned his position as a director of the Indianapolis Human Rights Commission. And good that they had him there. And it was then, according to Reiterman, that Jones confided in his ministerial assistant, Ross Case, that he had a vision of a nuclear holocaust and that he was hearing extraterrestrial voices.
Do you think they hit him with the Veilus, like, hearing voices in your head gun that they gave Philip K. Dick when they were trying to, like, harass him or whatever?
Right. So, of course I couldn't listen to something like that and not be like, all right, so what was the hospital that he was put in and why was he put there? And so I did my own research, folks, and I tried to find some stuff out about this place. And so, Reiterman et al., they framed this, that the official reasoning for Jones' hospitalization was stress-induced ulcer problem of some kind. And, they tried to frame this as this was a scam because he was, ashamed that he had a nervous breakdown. And my reasoning is rather that, what if the ulcer and the stress was true and he went to the hospital and, they, let's say, induced a nervous breakdown rather than, the other way around. Why? And and that's me then taking the story at face value, basically, rather than, trying to be some, like Reiterman is suggesting, that it was a scam and, that they had other motives. What if, what's actually being said is what happened and he comes out worse than he was before? And so, I have a few reasons for assuming this. First of all, the reason for the stress was that Jones had started to stray a little bit from the general line of the latter rain, and he had started to, publishing letters to Indiana Nazis, debating them on their Christian identity line. And, then he would publish their answers in the press, as a kind of, as a poster, like, bragging, like, oh, I own this motherfucker. Look at our, letter correspondence.
Wait, so is he like a Twitch streamer trying to debate different people?
Yeah, exactly. It's prove me wrong. Nazis tend to, like, they don't love it when you point, out that they are stupid. So they would start to, harass them. And so this is, then, what caused him stress. And I think that sounds like a pretty good reason. Why wouldn't that be the case? And it surely, gave him some very powerful, dangerous enemies in Indiana. So the hospital that he was put into was Indiana University Health Methodist Hospital, which of course has strong connections to another Indiana medical company called Eli Lilly. Why do we like Eli Lilly, Joe? Why do we like them, Jimmy? Well, because they are the first American company to start producing LSDs to make sure that, the CIA and MK Ultra Subproject 18 of, a grant of what, $400,000 that, made sure that they no longer had to import it from the outside of the USA. And this just so happens to be the place where Jones is first hospitalized. And
of course, they would later on go and make Prozac and so forth.
Yeah, they have some other interesting ones as well, right? Like the
actually, they made almost all the major, like, schizophrenic and, like, mental illness drugs. Yeah.
And the most prescribed assisted suicide barbiturate as well, which is the most prescribed assisted suicide drug of all.
Being used a lot in Canada right now.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, we'll get actually to Canada soon in an interesting hospital connection. And I found out in a book by an MK Ultra and a ritual abuse survivor called Kathleen Sullivan. she has a small footnote where she describes her dad at Indiana University, who worked with an Operation Paperclip researcher at, this hospital. And so here's the little piece of letter. I don't know, there's a lot of weird things in this book. But the thing is, they always are, right? Like I listened to one YouTube channel once with, 2 people who had been, just when the Epstein thing happened, I found them. And, they were saying, that a lot of this stuff sounds so strange because that's exactly, when it comes to like ritual abuse, that's why, how they do it, so that when the children come talking about it, nobody believes them, oh, there was a man in a monster mask and he was, cutting a rabbit open over, a candle fire or something, like it just sounds like something that a child would make up. And so if some, of this sounds a little bit strange, many times it sounds strange so that nobody will believe it. That's like, that's how they do it, basically. Right. And, right. And so here's the quote from this book. And this is, her dad's letter that she found that she wrote to her mother. I repeatedly remember that the boys and girls who were trained to become Aryan super warriors were called Golden. After these memories emerged, my stepmother gave me copies of letters that Dad had sent to her while attending Purdue. I was astonished that in a letter dated 25 of June 1979, he'd written, I went to see Golden Girl Friday night about a big blonde test tube baby raised by 2 scientists from Hitler Germany who was trying to prove his theories about the superiority of white blonde Republicans. He kept sprinkling super vitamins and growth hormones on her grits, then convinced a group of rotten capitalists with mustaches to finance an Olympic training facility for her. If she wins 3 golds in Moscow, they have her name for their living bras, cereals, and pantyhose. And the professor gets to prove that blondes can do anything better. And this was supposedly, going on at the Indiana University Hospital, where Jones was staying. And
I got 2 more facts for you.
Okay.
So Mark David Chapman's not from Indiana, but that his family lived in Indiana. His dad worked for Amoco, which is a big company there. His dad went to Purdue. So Mark David Chapman lived in Indiana for a long time. And then
so
so Indiana. The next one is that we know for a fact that the University of Indiana was one of the many institutions that received MKUltra funding.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, it doesn't start out well. I have 2 more hospitals. I mean, we're only at the first one. We have 2 more very sus hospitals in this story. So, it doesn't start out very well for, this being a completely organic phenomenon. Right. So, we continue with let's try to continue with the story here with Jones after then being released from this hospital. And a few weeks later, he takes off on a plane to Hawaii, ostensibly to scout out for a new site for People's Temple. Again, this doesn't make any sense then, according to the, avoiding a nuclear war theory, because why would he go to Hawaii, the only place, of the American soil that has been invaded in the last, 20, 30 years?
Or attacked or whatever, yeah.
I don't know, it's the last place. Yeah, it's the last place to actually, have been attacked by a foreign power. So why would you go there if you're looking for a place to avoid a nuclear war? It sounds, and, of course there's a military base there as well. So, it would be a good place to just take out with a tactical nuke, right? So this, would be the start then of a 2-year sojourn. Jones made his first stop in Honolulu, where he explored a job as a university chaplain. Though he did not like the job requirements, he decided to stay on the island for a while anyway, and sent for his family. First his wife, his mother, and the children, except for Jimmy, joined him. Then the Baldwins followed with the adopted black child. During the couple of months in the island, Jones seemed to decide that his sabbatical would be a long one. right? So this is kind of where the whole thing starts. And then there's the problem, right? Like, this is what John Hogan points out about Reiterman's chronology, that there's something wrong here because, you know, Jones left Indianapolis for Hawaii near the end of October 1961. But then there is, you know, the Guyana Graphic page 7 article that, you know, we talked about earlier. And that one comes out October 25, 1961. So, you know, it's the exact same time. How can he be in Guyana and how can he be in Hawaii, right? And so, you know, he says, Jim Hogan, you know, obviously Reiterman is mistaken, but, you know, the issue might not be just one of confused chronology. And here there is, you know, I really don't know what to make out of this part of the story. You know, this is the whole story about that there might have been two people acting as Jim Jones during these mysterious 1960s.
A real Lee Harvey Oswald situation.
Yeah, right. And so, you know, the reason for this are many, right? Like, one is the rumor that, you know, he was staying much longer, that he was hospitalized in a lunatic asylum. You know, he wasn't just 1 week in that Indiana University Hospital of the Methodist, but, you know, that he was staying much longer. And then there was also a thing about 2 passports being handed out. Right, like, why? Okay, and I see where I put down the information about the passport.
Also, I must interject here and say that also Mark David Chapman, famously in Hawaii, where he received medical treatment.
Right, yeah, he seems to be working, you know, a kind of, you know, made out path. Right, so Ross Case says that Jones sometimes referred to my psychiatrist. I'll get to the double passport later, but, you know, we pick up here from, you know, right, so medical treatment, right? Others have suggested that the real reason Jones went to Hawaii was exactly that, to receive psychiatric care without publicity, which make more sense than to avoid a nuclear war, according to Jim Hogan. And I tend to agree. In later years, Temple members Loretta Cordell reported shock at seeing Jones described as a sociopath. The description was contained in a psychiatrist's report that Cordell said was in the files of Jones' San Francisco physician, which is probably Dr. Carlton Goodlett. In a recent interview with Jim Hogan, Dr. Zucchero confirmed that Jones had been treated at the Langley Porter Neuropsychiatric Institute in San Francisco during 1960s and 70s. According to Zucchero, he had repeatedly asked to see Jones' medical file from the institute, but to no avail. I have asked Langley Porter Dr. Chris Hatcher to see the file several times, Zucchero told this to Hogan, but each time he has refused. I don't know why. He won't say. It's very peculiar. Jones has been dead for more than 20 years. Now, so before we examine Langley Porter a bit closer, let's try to wrap up, right, this, you know, mysterious months in Guyana with some background on the country. And I think we already did that pretty good, you know, like with Chedi Jagan and the People's Progressive Party, which is, you know, the big party when Jones gets there, and which is the party that is about to be outed by the CIA and the British. And, you know, they fund this other guy, which is the guy we've been talking about, which is Forbes Burnham. Oh yeah, basically we talked about all this already, didn't we, earlier?
I mean, yeah, we sort of referred to it, yeah. I think.
Right. And so, I mean, there are a few things like, Burnham, there is some people alleging that there's a news report. I tried to find it, in the Ukiah Daily that, Burnham visited Ukiah and the People's Temple in the early 60s. But, I didn't find anything about that. So maybe we should just cut this out. I see what I had that we didn't touch upon already.
Well, there is the thing. I think I mentioned it. Did I mention it in my episode that... let me double check. Oh, maybe I didn't. But so when news of Jonestown hit, as in the massacre or suicide or what have you, the Guyanese ambassador was in the good state of Indiana for absolutely no reason, I'm sure.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah, supposedly the Guyanese ambassador was visiting a friend. But it's just like, why?
Yeah.
Like, that's not even super related to what we were talking about. I was just like, wait, what?
Yeah, that's a kind of funny one, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I found here. Do you have more? Or
No.
All right. Right, so following this, the Guyana Graphic article, which we've been talking about, where he's making anti-communist speeches, which is... in 1961 there, during the same time that he's supposed to be in Hawaii. This is also when he disappears from public record for almost 6 months, which, again, points that there is something very strange going on here, right? And so, the problem of the two passports, which I was alluding to earlier, this double theory, or the lookalike theory, is, based that, during this time, passport 0111788 was issued in his name at Indianapolis on January 30, 1962. And so this is a considerable anomaly because Jones already had a passport, 22898751, issued to him in Chicago on June 28, 1960. And this is, this earlier passport, which he had planned to use on a trip to the Soviet Union, was still valid. So, why then did someone make an application for a new passport and who picked it up if Jones was in Guyana? And moreover, how is it possible that Jones' second passport had a lower number than the one he had received more than a year before? I don't know, right? I was thinking about that. Like, first I thought, that's just, sometimes maybe those things happen. Like, but do they? Like, no, right? They do increase in like you don't get a lower number, right? I don't know, how the passport.
I'm not certain that they never, start issuing older numbers again. But like, yeah, it is like weird and
yeah. I'm sorry if you don't have anything else on this. The double identity thing. I think I found one thing that is kind of connected to it, which is the body identification procedure. How did they know in the end, that the person who died in Guyana was actually Jim Jones? He shot himself in the head, right? Mm-hmm. So the double identity, right? The examiner. Wait, let's see here, so I get it in the right order. Okay, now I'll start with the FBI report, which is, what gives room for this suspicion, right? So the news media, reported on speculation voiced by former followers. This is from Serial 1162 in the FBI record. That Reverend James W. Jones, to the effect that the corpse, which has been tentatively identified as being Jones, is in fact that of an imposter or a lookalike. An arrest fingerprint card submitted by the Los Angeles Police Department on Jones in 1973 for the charge of, quote, lewd conduct was located in our files and would be used to identify his remains. Now, I remember this lewd conduct thing quite, I read it in Mark Lane's book, so I went back to look at it. And, here's what happened during that time, The examiner charged that the case against Jones had been dismissed at the request of the city attorney office for lack of evidence, but that the reasons for the dismissal had not been stated in the records at the time, as the law required. The article pointed out that the judge who sealed the records also took the, quote, highly unusual step of ordering the records of the law enforcement agencies to be destroyed, end of quote. So this is from the San Francisco Examiner, 22nd of March, 1979. And so since the records were no, this is no, it should be right. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Right. So what happened basically was that this lewd conduct thing was two policemen stopped Jones coming out of like a booth, and they said that he was I think it was a toilet, right? And they said that he was masturbating. The thing was that he had some, kind of there was something wrong with his bladder, I think, so that he had to like jerk out his pee sometime when he peed or something, so
Is that what he was saying?
yeah, the whole thing is even stranger. Like the first off, the lewd conduct thing seems like such a strange thing, to arrest somebody, for, because you could arrest anybody for that, I think, and there would be like a back and forth of who did who, and what, and if all you wanted to get is the fingerprint, then you could arrest somebody for whatever, if indeed this was somebody else, and Jones. He was, making these homosexual overtures, and an examination of the court's record reveals that the municipal judge Clarence Stromwell, who had been a police officer, directed the sealing and the destruction of all case records, including arrest records, in an order dated February 1st, 1974. In addition, he ordered that the police, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and other law enforcement agencies destroy their records. And so, as Mark Lane notes, it's like a casual reader of the story might be prompted to ask a number of questions that apparently did not occur to the authors. For example, if the case was nothing more than a simple arrest for a minor misdemeanor, why was there an FBI record? Why did a low-ranking member of the Vice Squad keep the matter alive by personally protesting its disposition to the two different Los Angeles chief of police? And why, we already have the biggest why. How can they use that then later to identify his remains? If they were all destroyed, the archive, what was destroyed? Was it destroyed, in a way so that, there is something, written in the report that, suggests that, this is obviously not Jones, like maybe he was doing something that Jones didn't usually do, or, I don't know, like there was something in there. Because they seem to have said that they were going to destroy it, which is already strange, why they're doing that. And then they seem to have not destroyed it since they are using it to identify him. So either way, it's hard to look at this, without being somewhat suspicious. And, it gives certain credit, I think, to this whole theory about there being two Jim Jones.
You know what it makes me think of?
No, tell me.
So, in my episode, I sort of go off of what Jim Hogan asserts, which is that Jim Jones was probably like a little police snitch for Dan Mitrione.
Right, yeah.
When he was like a teenager preaching to a black neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that
going in on communist meetings and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, okay, well, whatever that incident was where he got arrested, whatever they did, they end up destroying a bunch of records, including federal ones. And it's like, okay, was that a pretext to wipe out all of the evidence that he was a snitch, basically?
Yeah, or just to trim it in a
trim it down or something. Like, and then it's also just like, okay, well, what is the most Nazi thing but being a police snitch and then also making body doubles so that it looks like you are dead, which is what Martin Bormann probably did, right?
Yeah, I mean, it takes it also to such a higher, much higher level, because, here we're already seeing, it's an implication, as you said, of like federal agencies who are doing something here. We don't know what they are doing, but they have been doing something. I mean, either they are, so yeah, very odd, very, very odd. Why did they do this? Yes. So what was the last, the guy that you said also that you have a theory about him faking his own death. Who was it?
Oh, Martin Bormann.
Who?
That was Bormann? He was like the towards the end of World War II. He was like sort of like running the Nazi economy, and he set up a lot of the economic like shells that Nazis just dumped a bunch of assets into, and he probably faked his own death.
Oh, okay. Like the master of the rat trails, basically.
Yeah, and ended up probably in Latin America.
Ah, okay, okay, okay. All right. Yeah. Do we get into him later with Brazil?
No, no, no. It was just
No. All right. Yeah. It's interesting for sure. All right. So, yeah, like I said, Langley Porter will not be the last hospital, but, it could be a good hospital. There is evidence, that he was there, as we said, 60s to 70s. So what kind of hospital is this, Langley Porter? And might it explain something about these missing 6 months? Well, it's the nation's leading center for brain research, which, never a good thing. At least not, in this context. And so it's also noted, for its hospitality to anti-cult activists such as Dr. Margaret Singer. And I think that is the lady who works with the guy who wrote the penal colony article. And it's also famous for its experiments that it conducts on behalf of the Defense Department's Advanced Research Project Agency, the ARPA. While, much of that research is classified, the Institute has experimented with electromagnetic effects and behavioral modification techniques involving a wide variety of stimuli, including hypnosis from a distance. Which is okay. I don't really know if I want to know more about those things. Like, sometimes I wonder, do you get more suggestive if you already know about it and you know that it's a possibility? Like, does it make it easier?
No, I mean, honestly, like, anytime like it gets way into like electronic frequency wavelength stuff, I'm like, oh shit, I don't even want to know about this.
Yeah, right. I remember I wrote to you on Discord, like, what do you know about, what was it, ELF or something? You were like, get out of here, man. why is this popping up in the Jonestown story? Oh, shit. Right, so, of course, yeah, the Navy's involved and stuff. That's where I think they got that thing from the beginning, like submarine communication or something. I'm not an expert on these things.
I mean, that's like, good because like it's not like Dan Mitrione is like a former Navy guy or anything. Like it's probably
right,
just
yeah.
unrelated. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, let's go on. Yeah, I think I said already, that virtually every survivor of the Jonestown massacre were treated there at the Langley Porter afterwards. Which maybe they had some files already, just updating them.
They're doing the Men in Black thing where they're just like wiping people's memory.
Yeah, just look over here for a little bit. You'll be fine. All right. Let's see, what else did Langley Porter is not the big one. It's just, it's a little bit spooky. Very spooky. The big one, I'll come to the big one soon, but I'm going to let you do Brazil first if you have the strength. Wait, I'll just mention one thing about, one last thing, that this guy, the director, Gevins, at the place, I just thought this was interesting. Obviously I started looking into this, and this may be not so related to Jonestown, but his major things of research seems to be EEG, which is used a lot in the MK Ultra stuff, like where this is this new technology, I think, during the 70s, or it's not invented then, but that's when it starts being used a lot, that you can see things in the brain, right? Like on you can translate brain activity into some kind of computable data, right? This is what EEG is about. Yeah. And so, of course, this is what feeds this whole, fascination, right? During this time. And he's also really into biofeedback, which is, I mean, we were talking about really far out things before, but like biofeedback is also, when you start thinking, that's kind of like from, I'm going to sound like a yogic now or something, but what I get it's, it's ways to manipulate your own body, right? With an external source. So like when you've heard of those yogics up in Tibet, who can lower their heart rate, almost to the point of, it's stopping. And they can, sit in snow and the snow is melting around them because they can, increase their body temperature and stuff like that. I think that is I mean, that would be the yogic version of what biofeedback is researching, I think.
Yeah,
And so,
just
yeah,
like cybernetic view of like a body as a complete system, and like, you know,
yeah,
how
right.
one thing affects the others and so
Hmm.
forth. Yeah.
And the last few years, the man has been writing also a lot about TV, episodic memory, and marijuana. So, you know, I know when you talked about your, when you were talking about with your friends about Gravity's Rainbow, right? Or was it Gravity?
Or Crying a Lot 49. Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it was, yeah, and you were talking about that circus that they had in Birkenau,
Hmm.
and you know, here's somebody studying basically episodic memory, television, and marijuana. So you know, it makes me wonder if, you know, Netflix and chill and weed legalization, you know, is it just, you know, is it as benign as our liberal pop culture would have us believe? You know, they're really studying this stuff.
Yeah, like getting high and watching TV. It's like, okay, well, does that actually do any unintended consequences? Sure
Hmm.
would be
Yeah.
fucked up if they were specifically studying that.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like they are specifically studying that. So yeah, very free. You're very free now, I guess.
Listen,
All right.
if you get
Yeah,
high, if you imbibe, read a book. Don't watch TV.
yeah. If you
Go
can, read a
walk
book.
in outside. That's probably the healthiest.
Yeah, read the Bible for God's sake, you know, kids.
But maybe
Do
don't not
some.
while you're high, because then you might end
Maybe
up
not.
like a Branamite or something.
Yeah. Maybe not. All right. So yeah, that's the. I didn't have that much on Langley Porter because I wanted to save like some, you know, juicier things for a much more connected hospital later. But yeah, do you want to talk about Brazil? That's like the last place before we get back to Ukiah and, you know, the beginning of People's Temple, I guess, in America.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, so with
Hmm.
Brazil, what do we want to do? Because on the one hand, most of what I have, of course, was in the episode that, like, you know, I did. And I know we could definitely hit up some high points, but I also wanted to touch base on like basically how much more, like what other notes, you know, you
Hmm.
have, and like trying to gauge, you know, where we're
Yeah.
going and so forth. Like what will be the cutoff? Because we sort of started with talking about the end. And so I'm like
Yeah.
trying to like
Yeah.
make sure that we hit all, you know, the most important stuff is, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, my, if I'm gonna like summarize it, I
Mm-hmm.
would, you know, he seems to be doing kind of what he's been doing before. He seems to be contacting like local churches that are really into, you know, the Portuguese Brazilian version of voodoo, uh, trying to set up some kind of, you know, soft power base, you know, like a church that is going to serve as, you know, like an infiltration method for intelligence. This is, you know, what I read out from this whole scenario, right? Like there is weird things with a car standing outside of his house being reported by various people. That is from the consulate, you know, the American consulate. We get somebody later in an FBI investigation after the event. Somebody shows a picture that was sent to Jones by a man at the consulate, which is a picture of somebody who looks like Jones, and then calling Jones in to the consulate. I tried to find that picture, but
Which, like, what is this, like freaking Lee Harvey Oswald again? Like,
yeah, I mean, like really, like what's going on here? Why is you know, why is he even having contact with people in the U.S. Consulate here? Because he says later all the time, you know, that he was only friends with, you know, leftists, and you know that he, you know, he's trying to build his story as a communist again, and so. But it seems, by all accounts, that he's not hanging out with any leftist here. You know, he's living in the most posh upper scale area, upper class area of this place, Belo Horizonte, which was, you know, one of those safe of nuclear war cities, which, you know, because it's safe from nuclear war, it's very isolated. It's out, you know, in the hinterland of Brazil. Yeah. Oh yes. Do you know what? I found something actually yesterday that was interesting. about this, that that was very kind of, my original stuff. Other than, Mitrione, who he was meeting with in Brazil. And so the minister that Jones, established the most lasting relationship with in Brazil was someone called Edward Mullin. That was the father of that daughter we talked about earlier, who had a photograph of Jones and Castro. And so I looked up this guy then, Edward Mullin, and his religious background started with Amy Semple McPherson, who was a Canadian woman who was the first person who, like, Goebbels, shall we say, in the 20s and 30s, who understood the power of broadcast media when building, the Christian soft power crusade. Not only in the North Americas, but, also south of the border. And she also built the first mega church in the US called Angelus Temple in Echo Park. Where else than in the City of Angels, right? And, during the war, she said, "It is the Bible against Mein Kampf. It is the cross against the swastika. It is a God against the Antichrist of Japan. This is no time for pacifism." And her radio station network became an official subcomponent of the United States Office of War Information. That centralized censor and propaganda apparatus, which was, after the war, absorbed into the CIA. So, that's another nice connection between, the charismatic evangelist movement and US intelligence. Then this guy, the friend of Jones in Brazil, who joins the People Temple later, actually, he becomes more connected to the Assemblies of God, which, they were a collaborator of Amy's Foursquare Propaganda Church, the one I just talked about. And the Assemblies of God, they had a very active role in the US anti-Soviet military dictatorship of Samuel K. Doe in Liberia in the 80s. Among other such things, such as, preaching a subordination gospel, they also funneled funds from the Armed Forces of Liberia, AFL, through their church, the Assemblies of God, basically. And I found one book that talks a lot about this, Christianity and Politics in Douai, Liberia, published by Cambridge University. And then there's also another book called Modern Mercenaries by Oxford University Press. And, for those who don't know, where to place the AFL, the Armed Forces of Liberia, in their, Weltanschauung, like in their worldview, this was, according to the author, a textbook's example of basically the first modern private warfare, like a fully private funded army. So this, here's a nice quote where he says, "The United States paid DynCorp International tens of millions of dollars to demobilize the old army and raise a new one from the ground up." That is the actual language taken from the US government contract.
Wait, is that DynCorp?
Yeah, DynCorp. Yeah.
Oh, fuck, dude. Come on.
Was that the one who had the mine at the place where Jonestown was?
No. DynCorp has run human trafficking, dude.
Yeah.
Like in the Balkans. Well, in a bunch of fucking places. They were running like children out of Bosnia, dude.
Oh, fuck me. Yeah.
They
have so just so happens to be that kind of minister that Jones is hanging out with, and who later joins his, People's Temple.
And I was gonna say with Foursquare, dude, Foursquare churches are all over the US. That's like a relatively normal church, like.
That's strange. That's really strange.
That's freaking wild.
Yeah, considering that they were a sub branch of, the War Army Information. That's that's weird. Then basically you should know that when you're listening to them, you are listening to, it was once considered flat out propaganda. Like, that's what you are listening to. That's what they used it for.
Damn.
Yeah. And so, right. So, I mean, this whole story, like, again, it's a little bit like what we did in the beginning with the Branhamites, right? Like, just to paint it like an even broader picture now, like maybe not a broader, because, we're pretty close to Jones, but we're just, broadening the influence of what these, churches and stuff actually get up to in the, Africa and South America. So we just don't think, again, that they are selling Bibles, and, that might, we might feel bad about that, that they're ruining indigenous culture over there, which is, makes you want to puke sometime as well. But, they're doing...
It's bad enough, but then there's like actual crimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Funding like, private mercenary armies and stuff like that. Yeah. And then I guess I should say, what the whole thing, I think I said that to you already, like the whole thing that, converted me on Mitrione was when you said, like, how hard is it to knock up, some wires to a car battery and electrocute a brother, like it's not that difficult. And so when we're talking about Mitrione, the torture expert here in Brazil, he's probably doing something more sophisticated than that. And that's why he's there as, as a contracted, person of the CIA or some intelligence. And, why is he moving, like you said, why is he in Belo Horizonte when Jones is there? And why does Jones move from Belo Horizonte when he moves away from there? And,
what was Mitrione doing in the Dominican Republic? Like they knew how to torture people already. Yeah. Right. Like, like I said, like you don't need him to be teaching people how to hook people up to car batteries. Like, what else was he doing? I don't know. Something related to Jim Jones and Jim Jones adjacent topics.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. I had some more also about the guerrilla stuff, but I'll leave it. We haven't even gotten to the guerrilla things yet. But here was another example of, military militarization of religious groups, or or shall we say, actual armies funded through religious groups. Like take your pick. They have. It's messy for a reason, right? To get a clear picture of what's going on. That's why they're doing it in this way, so that nobody can be held accountable, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if you want to add something to Brazil, do that. Otherwise, let's go to the Mendocino State Asylum.
Yeah, the short version, and some of my listeners will know, basically the short version of just a few things on Brazil is that he was supposedly there selling a financial product for this company that was out and out just an intelligence asset. Supposedly he wasn't selling very well, and they said he wasn't charismatic, which like no one has ever said Jim Jones is not charismatic. He didn't speak Portuguese though, so why would he be selling anything anyway?
Yeah.
And
why do they keep him on if he's not selling anything as well?
Yeah, so it's just like nothing about his time in Brazil makes sense. Around the same time, though, they were gearing up for a coup in Brazil, so that's definitely what Mitrione was working on.
Yeah, and that would be the third country now in a row that Jones visits either right before or after a coup, and
Yeah, exactly.
Three is the, that's the lucky number. When you got 3 of those in a row, it's not a coincidence anymore. Like you said, don't be childish. There's something, there's a reason for this.
Yeah. So that's the most of what I got for Brazil, I think.
right. Fucking Mendocino State Hospital, man.
Oh yeah.
This is where it gets fucked up. I'm serious. This is where I've done like the most, original research. And I mean, the stuff, this stuff is so crazy, man. All right, so.
And like, I want to say for the listeners, I don't know any of this, so I'm very excited to hear.
Yeah, I've been literally saving this just to get like your first-hand reaction, and it's getting late over there. So I'm sorry, like for keeping you on, keeping this from you for so long. But yeah,
it's all good.
All right. So a short introduction here, right? So Mendocino State Hospital, originally the Mendocino State Asylum for the Insane, was established in 1889. Those good old days of mental health work. Major programs over the years have included treatment for the criminally insane, alcoholic, and drug abuse rehabilitation, a psychiatric residency program, industrial therapy, and others. As part of the major organization by the Reagan administration, the hospital was closed in 1972. All right, so here's a small statistic of who was in this hospital in 1969. Gravely disabled, 69%. That is 380 patients. I don't really know what that means, gravely disabled. But it goes on to say that there were also imminently dangerous to others, 10%. That is 55 people who could be actual, very loose cannons, I guess.
Yeah.
Then there is imminently dangerous to self, 21%. That is 117 people. Administratively ineligible. I really don't know what that means. 14%, 78 people. I mean, that could be just about anything. That could be,
Yeah.
we don't, what? And then refused to sign, 22%. 122 people refused to sign. Okay. Could have been voluntary, 7%. That is 41 people. I don't know also what that means. Anyway, here's, I did a lot of research, and so I find an eyewitness story, an actual eyewitness story by a survivor of the Mendocino State Hospital on a cannabis forum from Mendocino that I had to go like on the way back machine to find. And then, like maybe you think, oh, that doesn't give it any credibility. I looked her up, her name, it exists, and the name and the age and everything checks out. So I'll read this to you in length, what she said. Mendocino State Hospital was a hellhole. As a young girl, I was put in there by my mother, who could not control me. I always did what I wanted to. My folks got a divorce over this. Even the doctors told me I did not belong there. When I turned 18, I was released. I could tell you stories about that place that no one would want to hear. The patients that screamed from the electric shock treatments, I will never forget that if I live to be 100. The techs gave everyone Thorazine to shut them up. Everyone walked around like zombies. It was horrible. They tied people up in wheelchairs for hours without water or food. They put diapers on them. I can still hear the screams in my head. I saw people in white give these people shots to kill them off. I saw all of this stuff because I did not take the medicine the rest got. I acted crazy so I could just watch what was happening. It was horrible. I ran away 3 times but always got back. The male techs raped the young girls who did not know how to protect themselves. I unfortunately saw one of these episodes. He did not see me. Thank God for that. More horrible stuff happened than I can remember right now. I'm too old. I'm 69 years old now. The people who worked in the kitchen stole food to take home to feed their families. They had a place that baked bread, which was wonderful. But of course the people who worked there took that home too. If it was not nailed down, it went home with the folks who worked there. Finally, I turned 18. Thank God. My folks did not want me to come home. I had nowhere to go. While I was there, I met a wonderful tech. Her name was Alice. She took me home with her. I met a wonderful man and got married, and we had a son named Bill. This marriage did not work as my mind was shattered to pieces by what had happened. My husband and I had met a wonderful family in Redwood Valley, who unfortunately went with Jim Jones. She and many others from Redwood Valley also went. They all died. We were asked to go, but my husband said no. Thank God again for that. God was looking after us as he always has. I got remarried, but my husband died from alcohol. I hated Jim Jones and what he did to so many people. My whole life was a mess, starting with Mendocino State Hospital. Now the monks are there. Let them have it. It was a nightmare from hell. I will never be the same again. Susan Backel. Yeah, that's her story.
It sounds entirely realistic too, is the thing. That sounds very... I did some research on an episode that's coming out soon that basically studied a mental institution around the same time, a different one. Mm-hmm. And same exact shit, basically. Like, this was like unfortunately a common state for like these institutions to just be like hellholes.
Yeah. I mean, we will get into like the whole topic of deinstitutionalization later, because it seems to be very important to this story. But I mean, that doesn't mean that I'm so, that institutionalization in itself is a good thing, like either, what happened here, both, things seems to be the worst possible outcome that could happen, of the both of these options that existed in this story here around the 60s and the 70s. Right. So, okay. And, to look at some of the people who were responsible for this, there were 4 big doctors, Norman I. Dyshotsky, Wendell R. Lipscomb, Harry Hook, and Wilson Van Dusen. And it's Wilson Van Dusen that I've done the most research on here. Because in 1961, he had published an account of his exploratory research with LSD in Psychologia, that is the article, I guess, or the journal, entitled LSD and the Enlightenment of Zen, in which he compared the experience of some LSD subjects to the state of Satori in Zen Buddhism. He described this state as central human experience that could forever alter the subject's life as it deepened, quote, the very root of human identity, end of quote. He had found that it normally took several LSD sessions for a subject to reach Satori, and that it usually emerged after the individual finds the core of his identity and finds he can afford to give it up in psychological death. Again, this is not what Satori is. Like, these people are fucking crazy, man. Like,
they just they don't know what they're talking about.
No, even in the Shobogenzo, like the founding book of Soto Zen, like where Dogen talks about, this experience, he says that the practice does not break a person. Like, he explicitly says that this mumbo jumbo of completely breaking a person, that's not what we are trying to do, That is what,
Wait a minute. Are you trying to tell me Joe Rogan talking about ego death is like not accurate?
Yeah, might be he got something, a little bit half-baked onto his show. I don't know. Could happen. Yeah, I mean, it's not accurate. And, they even say this is what our critics are saying, that we are doing. And here are these people who try to revive it and doing exactly what, critics from the medieval 1300s were saying, that these monks were doing. Well, okay, so it only gets worse with Van Dusen, I'll tell you. Like, he was really into a countryman of mine, actually. Like, this Zen stuff seemed to be, a side thing. It wasn't a major thing that he was into. He was an avid reader of Emmanuel Swedenborg.
Oh no, come on, dude.
He read all of his work more than once, and he even published like a 500-page book on him. And so, here we are no longer dealing with just, Jungian obscurantism, but the man whose philosophy once had a great impact on the Duke of Södermanland, later King Carl XIII, who is the Grand Master of the Swedish Freemasonry, the Svenska Frimurarorden, which built its unique system of degrees and wrote its rituals inspired by Swedenborg. And, after much prodding, Van Dusen found that his patients generally considered their hallucinated personalities to be real entities who resided in another world. Quote, you can't see my air quotes here, but in another world. He thought that the voices were not mere hallucinations, but rather were actual persons living inside their minds. Okay, so in their minds might not be, entirely correct with regard to Swedenborg, but yeah, like you see where this progresses. Van Dusen found that he could speak to the hallucinated voices as though they were separate persons who happened to be invisible. This is the doctor,
Yeah.
This is not the patient having these ideas. This is the person meant to heal them. He thinks he can talk to their hallucinations.
Marcus,
right.
Marcus.
Yeah.
This is touching on a thing that I've started to get into recently, which is that MK Ultra is just spiritualism, basically.
Yes, it is.
And spiritualism is heavily influenced by Swedenborgianism.
Yes.
And so it's just they're just doing weird magic shit, basically.
Yeah. It's psychoanalysis completely without any kind of ethics.
Fuck, man.
You're just seeing whatever fucking happens. Press this button and see what happens. Okay, that's interesting. Write that down. We're doing science now. Yeah, man. These people are insane, man. And okay. So using this technique, he discovered that these hallucinations had what seemed like real personalities, entirely independent of the personality possessed by the patient, him or herself. They were often terrified of him. Well, they should be. And needed reassurance that he was not their enemy. After a while, he was able to begin treating the hallucinations themselves as real persons, and to turn an interview with the patient into a group therapy session in which the patient and any number of the patient's hallucinated personalities would take part. I mean, you're making people schizophrenic, man. You should not be doing this.
And then, of course, you know how they do group therapy. It's half the time they start doing attack group therapy. Imagine if you're doing that inside someone's psyche.
We're getting there, man. This is fucking guy. This guy is so crazy. I even found this, the last part that I said just now. I found that yesterday because I couldn't give this guy up. I thought, I needed more on him for this. And all right, so, okay, first a little bit more. I don't want to read everything that I had here about him. It's just a lot of Swedenborg nonsense, and I think it's all coming from this Himmel och Helvete, which he published in 1758. That's Heaven and Hell, where I think Van Dusen must have thought himself a gatekeeper to this spiritual world, right? Because according to Swedenborg, these angels and these demons are, they're kind of lingering people who are personalities or people.
What, thetans?
Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of I don't know the terminology here, but he seems to be, he says, in a phenomenological sense, there is a kind of high and low order. This is Van Dusen thinking, that, I translate it into high and low order, and then I don't speak about, demons and angels, and it will sound more scientific, but basically everything else is just Swedenborg stuff. So there is one trial, and this is so weird, right? The first trial that he wrote extensively on was with alcoholics, and with this when he's talking about Zen and this Satori experience that he himself had, it was 150 micrograms. Now and then, I assume, because that's, we're dealing with angels, right? Like himself, good people, not the lower class people and the bums, which is, this is literally what he's saying, lower class people and bums. And, they are then, I guess, that is code for the demons. And so with the demons, he gives them, 400 to 800 microgram. And, that's what he's writing down. I don't know, he could be giving them, whatever, 1,600, just, blasting their minds away from this planet.
But the point is he's giving more LSD to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Because demons need a different, therapeutic approach.
Oh yeah,
right?
of course.
Makes sense.
It's science, okay.
Yeah, it's science. All right. And now, now we get into some program to kill stuff because yes, right. I find one story where, where I thought I had it here was something about okay, I just tell you this one because this is since we're having fun at his expense. His first, his graduate thesis. Can you guess what the name of his graduate thesis was?
What?
A theory of mind in relation to space. How stupid is that? It sounds like, that, I don't know, is it, it's not Dazed and Confused, right? Like when he's like, you ever looked at the stars, man? Yeah. You ever looked at the stars on weed?
It's like he's like playing chess with his own brain.
Yeah. Yeah, this guy, I mean, what a character. Like, I mean, what a monster. Okay, so the first case report, where it gets interesting. The other ones is just, outlining a little bit about, his how you can make use of Swedenborg in the worst way possible. And so here we get to, in another part of this. One of his patients was a woman who had murdered a rather useless husband, within, quotations. She had a hallucination.
Wait, so like what an insane statement for him to be asserting that the husband is worthless. Like, not at all clinical or okay. Anyway, sorry, go on.
Right. I mean, he's really assessing whether she's an angel or a demon here, right? And then so he says, right, that she had an hallucination of the Virgin Mary, which told her to drive to Southern California and stand trial for murder. By way of authentication, the Virgin revealed that there would be an earthquake at Mendocino on the day she left, and another at her destination when she arrived. On the evening she left, Van Dusen was talking to the chaplain when an earth tremor made the brick building sway. He later read in the newspaper that there had been an earthquake in the south at the time the woman was due to arrive. And this is Van Dusen thinking that this is proof of something, that, like I really made contact now, with her hallucinated, and I led her on the right path, because I'm guiding her according to this earthquake volcano god, And I think, I know from my, my psychoanalytical studies that if you read Freud, actually, like in the Moses and Monotheism book, I think it is, Freud suggests that the Yahweh to the earliest Semitic tribes was, in fact, a volcano and an earthquake god. So I think this being, the master signifier of Van Dusen's, whole cosmology, it's not very strange. It's not very strange at all, actually, because, okay, Jimmy, now I want you to go on to the, Emmanuel Swedenborg Wikipedia page, and then I want you to click over to the Swedish article of him, and then I want you to go down, and I want you to tell me what you see on the family shield of the Swedenborg family.
All right. Let me see here. So that's on his page. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool,
the Swedish one.
Cool. All right. I'm seeing a crest, and there is very clearly a big volcano.
Yes. Yes. And then I found that out only yesterday. I was like, oh man, this is so good that we took, that I was mistaken by one day in our meeting, and that I had the time to even see, this one.
Good
now,
Lord.
To be honest.
Which also, can I just say, Scientology, volcano figures very prominently in the cosmology, right?
Yeah.
And that Thetans in Scientology basically fits in loosely with Swedenborgianism, right?
Yeah, right.
Good
it seems
Lord.
like they did, yeah. There wasn't like some outer planet, like some extraterrestrial being that came and then like threw all the souls into a volcano or something. That's I got that from South Park, but I don't know.
No, but like that's like generally it, yeah.
Fuck me. And I mean, still though, I was about to say, to give, I'm not going to give credit to the man. I'm just, I'm just being all that now. I just, nothing really bad has happened yet, right? In a way, she had already killed this rather useless husband before she was checked in, right? But if we're talking about earthquakes, maybe another particular person comes to mind who was, in this Ukiah Mendocino area, one of, those three big ones, the one who did share a cell with who else than the man we already mentioned before, right? Kemper. A certain Mr. Herb Mullin.
No.
Probably the least known of the Ukiah serial killers.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Mullin thought, like literally, that the Vietnam War was a blood sacrifice of American deaths to forestall earthquakes. And by the war winding down late 1972,
I mean, it makes more sense than the domino theory.
right? He now he does, right? And now he's thinking, I have to kill people in America because the war is ending. Otherwise there's going to be an earthquake. Everybody in Mullin's family says that Mullin got these ideas and that Mullin got crazy after he went to Mendocino State Hospital.
Fuck.
I found three different accounts where Mullin is saying that he, the one thing that his parents ever did wrong in their life was to send him to Mendocino State Hospital.
Damn.
I mean, Jimmy, is this not starting to sound like some program to kill stuff?
It's programmed to kill stuff. Like, what on earth? Like, a lot of people love to throw around the term, oh, the inmates are running the asylum.
Yeah.
But, like, in this case, this doctor is completely batshit insane. Or, maybe he's just making up. Who knows exactly
I don't know
what's going on? Who knows what's
I don't know, man.
Who knows? Like, is he just like manufacturing a justification after the fact, or is he actually insane? I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, like he's allowed to run amok, basically, do whatever the fuck he wants. They get so much money from these LSD projects. They're just like they see themselves as some kind of explorer. Like, we're gonna hit a few rocks on this journey. And
it's just like, why is Mendocino such a weird little nexus of evil? Oh, it's because like literally this kind of thing was going on.
Yeah. And Mullin, I know you have a thing for gifted children. Was he was voted most likely to succeed when he was 16 by his classmates. Which, and maybe this was why Van Dusen talked so well to him. His birthday is the April 18, which is, the anniversary of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, which he himself thought was very significant, which means, that transference is just running like, a loose wheel when he's talking to Van Dusen about, the importance of earthquakes, is what I'm thinking. And, Van Dusen was probably, quite early thinking the same. And Herbert, when they found him, he had a tattoo across his chest that said "legalize LSD." He tattooed that onto his chest. I mean, what? Okay,
legalize it.
Yeah,
such a ringing endorsement for legalizing LSD.
Right, they should have that story like up there every time. And that's also the thing. Like I was about to say. Every time you talk to some, acid gnostic person, who's like, they will liberate the world, man, and like all these other drugs, they're bullshit. Like, Van Dusen is saying the exact same things, and I can like he's we already had his mind in relation to space thesis. Like, he's obviously he's one of these people. Like he's just got a white coat on. That's the only difference. And so I found I was thinking here, okay, I'll rendezvous back to Van Dusen later because I need to kind of put this, then in the context, right? Like why I haven't even said actually why we're talking about Mendocino State Hospital. Maybe I should do that. And here, it's okay. First, maybe one thing about Mullin. He says, in the final report about why he was sent to Mendocino, he says, he was more withdrawn and started constantly telling me we should have done this, we should have done that or that other thing, that we shouldn't have talked him into going into Mendocino and the medical center and drug abuse and all those different places. I guess it's a rehab, that those places didn't do him any good, and that we should have started telling him about sex when he was in the 6th grade. He said he'd had enough of psychiatry and all the games. Now that's a very particular word, the games and the game, which we will have to return back to, because it fits into something which was, a bigger project here. in Mendocino going on at this time. You know, we already mentioned that the hospital closed down in 1972, you know, and there was a project basically called the Mendocino Project to deinstitutionalize the whole of, like, you know, the welfare system basically, and that they were going to refunnel and, you know, remove everybody from these, you know, institutions into what Van Dusen at certain times call, you know, culture therapy, where he's talking about alternatives again and again, something which, the People's Temple fitted very well. And the department head of the welfare program, or that state department in Mendocino, I had so many things here on like MK Ultra doctors in general and like a lot of, you know, the sources where they were getting their stuff from. But now that I already started talking about this, I'll just, you know, finish it and we can go back to that. The guy, it was director Dennis Denny. He said that the whole reason that the Jonestown, or like, the People's Temple moved to Mendocino was because of this Mendocino plan. Because basically, you know, they were going to take over all those people that were inside the hospital, you know. They were going to funnel them into the People's Temple, get money, and also get followers, you know, for taking over their treatment. And Van Dusen is quoted again and again. I found 3 separate tapes from Jonestown where Jones is bragging about how Van Dusen, in turn, is bragging about the drug rehab program of the People's Temple. And according to a certain Dr. Klatte, who was the director of the Mendocino State Hospital, no less than 6 people, but probably more, of the People's Temple members worked at Mendocino State Hospital. Among them was Jones' wife, Marceline Jones, and Larry Layton, which just, you know, this is not just this is not just circumstantial or, let's say, you know, geographical coincidences anymore. You know, they were pretty much as linked as you could be. You know, as a private entity can be linked to a federal entity.
Damn.
Yeah, that's some pretty fucked up shit. Like,
so
why?
Let's see. Larry Layton specifically was working at Mendocino. Jones's wife,
Marceline Jones.
Jim Jones was talking about that doctor that we've been talking about.
Yes.
They knew each other. Yeah.
And they were a part of this whole program too, you know, that is later funded by the Reagans. And like, you know, Reagan is starting it as a, you know, when he's here as you know, I guess he's the state senator, right? He's not a president or anything.
Governor,
and, you know,
I think. Yeah.
Governor, right, yeah. And so he's going to continue later, you know, when he does become president. And so is the Bushes going to do.
Listen, Marcus. Like, listen. Sometimes private organizations can just operate more efficiently than state.
That's true. That's
so
true. That's true.
You know,
they have, you know, a more hands-on approach.
You know, we're just like saving money here. Yeah.
We're leaning it. We're outsourcing and we're leaning things, you know. Lean and clean for the machine. We're gonna get things going. All right. Good stuff. Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. I mean, because I just wanted to say something also a little bit, like, you know, because we talk about, you know, Sus Indiana, and we already had, you know, this kind of Eli Lilly stuff that we talked about before. I'm gonna see here who it was. Oh yeah. So that doctor, right, Ernest Klatte, who seems to be in, you know, who seems to be in charge of the Mendocino plan, and so undoubtedly he must have also had, you know, interactions with Jones as they were, you know, setting up their drug rehabilitation program. He is also from Sus, Indiana, in the University School of Medicine. Yes.
Interesting. Where on earth would he find such weird occult ideas? Probably.
Yeah. Where would he have known that this Mendocino plan was taking, you know, place so that they can move there? You know, why did he know that? Right. That's what, some people have been saying, when they're saying that this, the director of the welfare department was wrong, that's not true. They say that like, oh, how could Jones know that, the Mendocino plan was taking place in California? Well, like, come on, man. Like that's, those are the things that he's interested in. They're already, looking ways to milk the welfare program. He was already doing that back in Indiana. So, why wouldn't he be looking at another opportune place to do that? Which just then so happens, also figuring in the magazine about, safe nuclear war areas or whatever. Yeah. So, well, Eli Lilly also, I just put down here, I don't know how, what this means, but they also produced the, secobarbital, which is considered to be, an obsolete sedative hypnotic, which is widely abused and known on the street as red devils or reds. And apparently thousands of these were found in Jonestown.
Yeah.
I've never heard about that one, but you Americans, you always know these fucking weird names of like drugs. Like, you know it, like
all the stupid street names. Yeah.
No,
I was looking at Eli Lilly for the Sus Indiana episode, so like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it keeps popping up, man. Okay, so right, like just a general like overview, then like of this kind of MK Ultra project. What do we assume that they were doing here? Before I get to the whole defunding project, which is that is clearly linked. This is maybe more speculative. Then right. So one of the most on the documents of the MK Ultra projects, right? Like one of the most highly funded projects seems to be one of the most funded doctors to start off with was Dr. Carl Pfeiffer. And Carl Pfeiffer is one of those if I remember correctly, right? Like he's one of the Harvard trio, right? With Leary and one more guy. And his major thing was, this whole thing about studying, schizophrenia, and paranoid schizophrenia in particular, and alcoholism, all of the diagnostic categories, which, I would say that not only Miller fits, but also Jim Jones, right? And they were, in their own stupid Harvard jargon, they were talking about, the perfect programmed trip, right? Like how to program the trip. And, another doctor, more famous, I guess, like on the same payroll and with the same interest was, Jack Gottlieb himself, right? And Gottlieb, in one paper by him, he talks about, steps towards isolation of a serum factor in schizophrenia, which deals with something called taraxine, which is a substance, supposedly, which Dr. Heth believed he had discovered in the blood of schizophrenics. And at a 1956 annual meeting of the American Psychiatric Association, Heath announced that they had induced full symptoms of schizophrenia in 2 non-psychotic prisoner volunteers from Louisiana State Penitentiary. Which, again, they're using the EEG. And Dr. Pfeiffer said, or he also wrote a paper.
Which, like, I'd love to see the informed consent for, like, I volunteer to have induced schizophrenia. Cool.
Yeah, I was about to say. Yeah. I'll wake up from that feeling just dandy, like that would be no problem. All right. Yeah. And all of these people, they either appear as co-writers in Van Dusen's, papers, or they are cited by him, like they are like, part of the same kind of,
all colleagues and so forth.
doctor group. Look, they're all looking into this thing, and so Dr. Pfeiffer had another, interesting title. He says, the title says quantitative electro. And this is such a hard word, the EEG, electroencephalographic, and right, what we talked about earlier there with Langley Porter. Analysis of naturally occurring schizophrenic and drug-induced psychotic states in human males. They're making good comparison here, I guess, like how can we make, some artificial schizophrenics, and, how well do they, their behavior correlate with the naturally occurring ones. And this was funded by the Subproject 41. And all right, so we're going to have, we're returning again, not just to Swedenborg, but I guess you already know this, but the major funder for the project, to find the secrets of the schizophrenic induction, or what Pfeiffer and Leary called, the programming of the trip, was the Scottish Rite Committee for Research, which is, a Freemason order. And maybe you don't know this one. I don't know, maybe you do. But do you know where is the largest Scottish Rite building in the whole world?
Is it Indiana?
Yes, of course it's in Indiana. The Scottish Rite Cathedral in Indianapolis. What are they doing? All right. So, okay. And also, I didn't know this also until I, did the research now for coming onto your show. But even like Jonestown, there was a psychologist, Tom Grubbs, who accused Jones when they're in Jonestown. Like, he's a kind of standalone guy, and he accused Jones of brainwashing. And he admitted in his accusation, like it's a written paper, you can go and look at everything he's saying that Jones is doing while they're there in Jonestown. And he says that he knows what he's doing so well because he himself studied brainwashing at the university in California. And he was in charge of Jonestown's, school children's psychology program. And check this out. His wife survived the final white night, together with a Red Brigade, bodyguard called Tyrone Mitchell. And Tyrone Mitchell would later go on to become the first school mass shooter in the US in 1984 at the 49th Street Elementary School, where he wounded 13 and killed 2 with an AR-15 rifle before committing suicide.
Hot damn.
You're right. That one came out of nowhere for me. I was like, what? How is that not interesting? I haven't seen anybody put that in their books. How is that not interesting that the first school mass shooter in the US was a bodyguard in Jonestown?
In the Red Brigades, no less.
Yeah, right. I mean, now we're definitely cooking with some, program to kill stuff. He just, snapped a little bit later, or, was triggered a little bit later, or whatever. I don't know how it works. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, this guy also, the Grubbs, the psychologist, he was a guy who designed something called the box, which was like a kind of buried box that they put into the ground, and they would either, taser people with like kind of like these cattle, tasers, which is, you could die from one of those, I think. Like if you're a child, definitely you could die. And they would call it, the blue eyes, some kind of like anti-Nazi thing, because it would be all dark and you would just see, those 2 blue eyes. And so they, would scare the children with that. And they also had and I think maybe he learned this one from the Alleluia shamans, that sometimes in the box, they would put like one of those poison dart frogs into the box with the person, which, that's basically a death sentence, right? You touch that thing, you're not coming out of the box. And there's even one recording I listened to when they're threatening like some guy, that he's gonna go into the box. Like, oh, you fucking punk, you wanna go into the box? You wanna talk to the frog, man? You wanna talk to the frog, you fucking punk? Something like that. It's just weird. Yeah, that's so creepy. Right. Okay. So. All right, let's should I cover then, quickly? Let's try to cover this Mendocino plan. Yeah. Yeah, what was it? Right, so Van Dusen lays out some of the theory, for this in a paper in which he calls cultural therapy, which, was a macro project on how to create good or bad cultural subgroups. In practice, this meant an infiltration of the Mendocino Welfare Department by at least 8 employees from the People's Temple, according to Social Service Director Dennis Denny from 1966 to 1977. And so this is not, Mendocino Hospital itself. This is another 8 employees who's going into the welfare department, making sure that, they can get the people out of there into the People's Temple. And Carrie Minkler of the welfare department stated, "You didn't open your mouth. You didn't mention the People's Temple in our department. Even the walls had ears. There wasn't anything that went on in our office that Jim Jones didn't know the next day. People's Temple workers went through the workers' case files. The CIA could have used them. The atmosphere was really tense." So that's just a clerk, throwing it out there that the work that they were doing in the welfare department seemed like CIA work. Like they were that good at it.
Yeah.
Finding, out what people needed, because there's a screening method, right? Like, they need to get the right kind of crazies into the temple if this is going to work out. And so, they were looking at all the case files and, they're looking at the people.
And that would also help with the faith healings, for one thing. Having
Right.
access to people's medical files. And then on the flip side, like, just the idea that like having people on the inside of like the welfare aid or like a social services department would aid in all kinds of fucked up like human trafficking situations.
For sure. And Dennis even make a comment about this. First he says, it was obvious that he was building a base. It was obvious that he was building a financial empire from other people's money. And that he was taking personalities that were less than competent in society and leading and directing their lives, then he said. Then he said that he was astounded to find Mendocino State Hospital operating close to 50 family care homes. A small community, a small social service department, a small sheriff's office, a small police department. How did they handle that kind of action? We didn't even have that many homes where I came from, a metropolitan area of Southern California. I mean, I guess it's meaning in that must be like San Diego or something, right? Which is a lot bigger than Mendocino. Mm-hmm. That kind of program brings about severe problems in any community. What's the scam? Then he asked. And so, he maintained that Jones moved to Redwood Valley not for the peace of the family, not only for a piece of the family care home action, but also because of potential money in residential care homes for the elderly and foster homes supervised by social services. Before Denny arrived to become social service director in 1969, his department corresponded with Indiana welfare officials about Jones, and from that correspondence, Denny concluded Jones was the greatest humanitarian con man ever to hit this valley. Denny said he confronted Jones in 1970 with the Indiana information, which showed, according to Denny, that Jones had set up a personal clientele to milk the Indiana welfare system. Denny said he accused the temple leader of plotting to do the same damn thing here. Denny said Jones' reaction of, "Oh my God, who told you?" convinced him of Jones' ulterior motive. Denny said he told Jones, "I want you to know that if you start fooling around with our department, I'm going to blow the whole scene on you." According to Denny, the total number of residential care homes, temple and non-temple, between 1969 and 1977 was approximately 75 county-wide. And here it gets fucking creepy. Denny says, this is the director of the welfare, he says that the figure of 150 foster children dying in Guyana was derived from information provided by Mr. That's him providing the information, Mr. Dennis Denny, Director of Social Services, Mendocino County. Mr. Denny had advised the General Accounting Office team that visited his department that upwards of 22 children a year since 1971 were being placed in licensed foster facilities operated by members of People Temple. And so, that's crazy. And I always thought that is like, I don't know, not to be morbid or anything, but, that must have been the essential first part of, program White Knight, that first you kill off all these children and then all the people who are present. I mean, what would you do? I would just be like, okay, fucking kill me then. I don't want to, what? This whole thing just turned really dark. I don't want to even live with the memory of this.
No, it's interesting too, because again, it's these tiny little details. Because I did recently 2 episodes on the serial killers Lake and Eng, and
Right. Yeah.
they targeted a guy or more than one victim that had ties to elderly care facilities
Okay.
in this general area.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, and you were suggesting that there was a bigger network, right? Like they were providing.
yeah, that Lake and Eng probably were involved in some other network. Yeah, but like also
Right.
like Leonard Lake was essentially stealing identities and doing welfare fraud. So like,
Oh
was
yeah,
he
yeah.
just like, where did he, like,
Who taught him?
who taught him? Was he in
Yeah.
any way connected? He was basically
Mm.
doing 2 different angles to the same thing that like
Right.
Jim Jones was like doing,
Yeah.
right? Like,
I mean,
I don't
yeah.
see like any direct links. It's just like, what's up with that, man?
Other than the Mendocino plan, just giving fertile ground for this kind of stuff,
Yeah,
and again, how they could have anticipated some of the outcomes of doing it this way, and I'm pretty sure that's what they wanted, many times. The Christian far right, funneling people away from the institutions into churches. There must have been like a dream come true for them, I think.
yeah.
Right. So, yeah. Okay. I have like all the tapes where Jones is talking about Van Dusen, but it's just him bragging about Van Dusen, bragging about how good their drug and alcohol rehab program is. But then we start. Now we just touched upon it. Like what was this bigger project? That what did the Mendocino plan look like in practice, right? And so it was already mentioned right up in the article that we started off with, that he mentioned similarities to the seeds and Synanon, and like the seeds grew out of Synanon, right? And how Synanon started to become really cultish right around the time that MK Ultra was supposedly shut down, right?
Yeah.
And when this whole that is the same year, right? 1972, I think, when they shut down also Mendocino Mendocino Insane Asylum, right? Yeah. Now, how about to do this then credit, because Van Dusen's gonna reappear, and we're gonna have a few other things. Let's do one more, maybe then episode later, but like it will be a shorter one. I would say there's a quarter left, so considering we've been going now for almost 4 hours. And I mean, thank you for saying that, because I'm not going insane, basically, is what I'm feeling right now. It's so good to have somebody to talk to about this stuff.
Yeah. It's like, holy shit, dude.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. Well, then let's call it quits here, because then we'll also be able to do some more free range, brainwashing when we. That's one hell of a slip, man. Mind mapping, or what's it called? Yeah, the spitting balls, right? About what this whole thing, is. Yeah, free range brainwashing. What the fuck is that? Sounds like some eco-fascist. These people are out in the field. We don't keep them in boxes anymore. All right. Good.
Free range, yeah.
Oh shit! All right. Well, it's been been a real pleasure talking to you, man. Like it's so so nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
And
this is all freaking gold. Like I'll do we'll record like a more formal end where we actually plug it or whatever.
Yeah. Sure.
At that part. But thank you so much, dude. This is super good fucking research,
all right,
man.
Sweet stuff. Thank you. All right, go to and have a nice sleep now. I think you're just gonna pass out probably. You won't have any nightmares or anything. All right.